Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Sheryl Johnson-Roulhac. You look so pretty, you look beautiful. Come on in here.
I can't believe it's been 2.5 years since he died. Before the pancreatic cancer diagnosis, he was so strong and health conscious. He was my friend, my confidant. He was the shoulder I cried on. He was my strongest advocate. Yeah, he was also my toughest critic. I called him my daddy, but he wasn't my first father. That honor goes to the man who married my mother when I was 3.5. His name was Robert Johnson. He was a veterinarian aide at the animal hospital in our small hometown of Marianna, Florida. Daddy Doc was so good, he was so good at what he did, even though he only had a high school diploma, the doctors at the hospital would allow him to perform surgeries. So most of the folks in our hometown called him Doc. I called him Daddy Doc. And he called me little girl. Daddy Doc loved the ground that I walked on, and he would have done anything he could to protect me. When I was almost 5, my mother didn't see me standing in the kitchen next to her, and she was frying chicken. So when she turned, she accidentally poured the pot of hot grease all over my face. By instinct, I reached up and pulled my hand down over my face, and I removed a layer of skin. At the hospital, the doctors wanted to give me injections in my face, with a needle over a course of some weeks. Daddy Doc said, "Hell no, y'all ain't doing that to my little girl." So Daddy Doc came up with a concoction using the drugs from the dispensary at the animal hospital. And twice a day for the next several weeks, he would lovingly and gently apply this potion to my face. It is because of him that I healed, and there are no signs that I was ever in the accident. When it was time for me to go to kindergarten and I needed a birth certificate, Daddy Doc went to pick one up for me. And while he was there, he decided to claim paternity. No. His goal was to give me the only last name that he could, his. He wasn't trying to take the place of my absentee father, nor was he trying to keep me from my family. In fact, it was Daddy Doc who would point out my biological family to me. They attended the churches that we visited or that I grew up in. He would say, "Now, little girl, that over there, that's your aunt, or that's your uncle." He introduced me to my great-grandfather. The only person who resisted that introduction was my grandmother. As he was taking me up to her to say, "Mr. Hazel, this is your granddaughter," she was backing up like, "No, I don't want to know her." And she never did. I was the only granddaughter that she had, but she didn't want to know me. The next time I saw her was when Daddy Doc took me to the funeral home so that I could view her body, because she had died. My grandmother's funeral brought my daddy into my life for the very first time. I always knew he had existed. I knew his name was Roy Roulhac. I knew he was in Detroit. I had dreams of meeting him. I used to sneak into my mother's bedroom, and she had pictures hidden in the drawer, and I would look at the pictures of him. I had this dream that he was going to be this doting daddy who was going to bounce me on his knee and call me pet names, and he was going to tell me that I was pretty. The reality of our meeting didn't match my dream. I was 9.5 and in the 4th grade. There was a knock on the door, and I saw who I knew was his cousin, Roger, beckoning me into the hallway. When I got in the hall, there was this man with him. I looked up. He was tall. He was dark like me. He had a goatee, dark sunglasses, and the biggest afro I had ever seen on a man. Somebody said something about a father. To this day, I can't tell you whether that man said, "Hi, Sheryl, I am your father," or if Roger said, "Hi, Sheryl, this is your father." Because the next thing I knew, I was just in tears. I was just crying hysterically. So much so that they could not calm me down, so they left. But now I have two daddies. I have my daddy, who lives in Detroit, 1,000 miles away, and I have Daddy Doc, the man who's raising me. There was never, ever a question which daddy would escort me down the aisle when I married. Daddy Doc was as nervous as I was, so he spent the day walking around saying, I've got to give my little girl away. Now, what I didn't know was every time he said that, he was taking a nip. So he was so drunk by the time we got ready to go to the church that he backed into a tree. My daddy was also at the wedding, although he would really have preferred that I be finishing college instead of getting married. My daddy never, ever took away what Daddy Doc did for me. He always acknowledged him. In fact, he referred to Daddy Doc and my mom as my parents. It was my daddy who, when we finally convinced Daddy Doc to come on his one and only trip to Detroit, gave up his bed so Daddy Doc could have the best room in the house. One of the last things Daddy Doc said to me was, "Little girl, I love you so much I would climb a tree backwards for you." And I knew that he did. And I loved him just as much. My oldest son carries his last name, and my youngest son is named in his honor. But it was my daddy, when Daddy Doc died, who gave me the emotional support to get through it. And along with that, he gave me a checkbook and said, "Do whatever you need to do." A few weeks after I met my daddy, I wrote him a letter. "Dear Daddy, I hope your trip back to Detroit was safe. I am so sorry that I acted like a baby when I met you, but I didn't know you. I promise I'll be a big girl next time. Popcorn City, Ice Cream State. A letter like this don't need no date." That letter was the first of many letters that I would write him over the next 25 years until I was almost 35 years old. Those letters are the story of us. And they really are a diary of the pain that I experienced on the journey of getting to know him. They chronicle how I went from calling him Daddy to Mr. Roulhac to not calling him anything at all. I had no clue that my daddy kept every letter I ever wrote him until I moved to Detroit and he presented me with this binder that was about 3 inches thick, and he had every letter and card in chronological order. He gave me this binder saying, "Sheryl, there's a story in here. We need to write this story." But I wasn't ready to deal with the pain that I'd experienced. And so I put the binder in the closet. And over the next 20 years, that binder moved back and forth between us as he kept saying, "We need to write a book." And I was like, "I don't want to deal with that little girl." And so I left the binder in the closet. It's only been within really the last 3 weeks that I've been able to pull the binder out and actually read the letters that I wrote over those 24 years. It's been cathartic for me to read those letters. And my dad is right. There is a book somewhere in there. My daddy didn't like to write, so the early letters to him is more of a plea. "Please write back, please write back, please write back, please write back." Because sometimes his letters would take weeks, if not months, to come. In my teens, I was angry and I was frustrated, and I said things like, "You don't know me and you never ever wanted to know me. You just keep making empty promises." But I was also a little girl still looking for the love of her dad when I wrote, "All I need is fatherly love. I have all kinds of other love in my life, but what's missing is father love. If you would just love me in the next year, that's all I want from you. By my 20s, I was frustrated and angry, and I said, you know, you really keep making these empty promises to me, and I'm tired. In my 30s, I wrote him what would be the last letter that I wrote him. I was almost 34 years old, and I sent him a letter that said, I've spent 24 years fearing that you would walk away again. I've been afraid that you would I would say something or do something that would cause you to say, look, don't bother me anymore. I'm done. But I have finally come to the place where I know that whether you stay or whether you leave, I'm going to be all right. I'm special and I'm strong and my life will go on. A few weeks later, not a few weeks, a few days later, my dad wrote me back. And as it happens, that letter is the only one that I have from him because I burned all his letters in a fit of rage one time. And that letter, again, it came short, it didn't take as long. He said, Dear Sheryl, after reading your letter, my first thought was to get a knife and slice my wrists. No doubt I am the worst person you have ever known. Despite your insistence that being a stay-at-home mom is the most noble and important thing that in your life right now, I believe that you are interested in establishing and in advancing a career that will allow you some financial independence. More importantly, I believe you want to actualize the tremendous potential that you have. You have a lot to offer the world, and the world is out here waiting. Hopefully, your marriage really is made in heaven, as you say it is, and it will last forever. Nevertheless, mama may have and father may have, but God bless the child that has its own. 9 months later, my dad invited me to move to Detroit. He said, Sheryl, there is opportunity in Detroit, and if a person can't make it in Detroit, he can't make it anywhere. And so 2 months later, I did, and I lived right across the street from him. I can't say living that close to him was easy, because it absolutely was not. And of course, I had brought all my baggage with me. You know, it was in the suitcases too. My dad was very direct, and his directness would hurt my feelings, and I would cry. But my dad was intent on developing a relationship, and he did the work with me. I didn't know he noticed that I didn't call him anything. I would wait until he looked at me, and then I would start speaking. And he said, Sheryl, I noticed, and it's okay. After I reflected on it, that's when I actually started calling him my daddy. My daddy was a good listener. So he heard me when I said, because every time he would introduce me, he would say, this is my daughter, this is my daughter, this is my daughter. And I finally said, you know what? I have a name. I have my own career. You need to add my name when you say that. And he heard me, and he would then say, this is my daughter, Sheryl. This is my daughter, Sheryl. I know that he was extremely proud of me. My dad would notice when I wasn't talking to him, you know, because I was in one of my spaces, and he would pull it out. He'd say, what's the matter? You know, let's talk about it. Our relationship was important, and I'm so grateful that he made the effort, because I finally learned to forgive. I finally learned that he wasn't there when I thought I needed him, but he was there at exactly the right time for me and for my growth and for my development. we developed, and I'm so glad we had the time. That was the closing song that I chose for his celebration of life. I'm so glad we had this time together. Just to share a laugh or sing a song, it really did seem that we just got started. And then came the time that we had to say so long. My dad taught me and many others many lessons. Lesson one was live life fully. My dad did not listen to those folks who said, Roy, why don't you wait until you retire before you travel? He died 17 months after he retired, so we're both glad that he was able to travel to all 7 continents, and I plan to do all 8. My dad taught me to prepare for dying before it's time. That same letter written 22 years ago, he was telling me then, I need you to understand my estate. I want you to know how to manage it. When the time came, my daddy's estate was in order. His finances was in order. And he made certain that I didn't have to deal with probate court because he had a trust. My dad taught me humbleness. I never, ever heard him introduce himself with his title. I never, ever heard him tell anybody how many degrees he had. So when he told me, Sheryl, don't let your first name become doctor, I understood exactly what he meant. He never forgot that he was the son of a blind peanut peddler. And he wanted me to remember to stay humble. But he also taught me a lesson in dying, and that it's going to happen to everybody. So he lived fully, but he prepared to die. He was confident in his own spiritual sense. He was never a religious man, and he did not have a deathbed conversion. He stayed true to his own values, and he wasn't worried about what would happen. Now, he wasn't ready to go, but he accepted that that was what was going to happen, and he helped me to plan the service that we had for him. My name, I changed my name 3 years ago, shortly before he died, to Sheryl Johnson-Roulhac. That last name honors the 2 men who meant the most to me, or who mean the most to me. Robert Johnson, my stepdaddy, who called me little girl, and Roy Roulhac, who never ever called me a doting name. That was not his way. But it was okay because he helped me to be Sheryl. And as I carry that name, I carry it proudly, hoping that those 2 men are proud of the woman that I am and continue to be.
Sheryl Johnson-Roulhac.